Have you ever stopped to think that even the most faithful disciples in the Bible carried secrets? That even men closest to Paul like Timothy faced deep doubts, internal betrayals, and identity crises that could have shattered their faith? Most people know Timothy as the model disciple, the young man faithfully guided by Paul. But what few realize is that his journey was marked by family conflict, death threats, and even a hidden truth about his own father. What if I told you Timothy's faith nearly collapsed because of a betrayal within the group? Or that he was forced to lead the church while Paul himself was in chains in Rome? In this video, we'll explore the untold side of Timothy's story. A real, emotional journey of faith amid persecution and life-changing decisions. If you've ever struggled between what you were taught at home and what you feel in your heart, this story will speak directly to you. Because Timothy's truth is closer to ours than we might think. From a young age, Timothy lived between two worlds that didn't seem to fit together. His mother and grandmother were devout Jews women of strong faith who taught him the scriptures with love and discipline. But his father, a Greek, looked down on all of it, valued reason, Hellenistic culture, and couldn't understand the spiritual passion of their home. That mix shaped a boy torn between tradition and logic, between the temple and the gods of Olympus, between heart and reason. Can you imagine growing up in that crossfire? One Sabbath was filled with Torah readings, the next, Socratic philosophy echoed through the house. Jewish peers saw him as impure, while Hellenists mocked his childish faith. His hometown, Lystra, didn't help either, a cultural melting pot where beliefs clashed daily. Timothy learned early on to tread carefully, silence his questions, and quietly carry a longing in his heart to understand who he truly was. It's interesting how some of the greatest spiritual leaders rise from messy, turbulent, even contradictory beginnings. Maybe that's exactly what God uses inner conflict as the starting point of a deeper calling. Amid the confusion, something began to stir inside Timothy, spiritual restlessness, a hunger for purpose. But he had no idea that his search would soon lead him into the path of a man named Paul. Everything changed during one of Paul's visits to Lystra. The apostle preached with a kind of authority that made the ground tremble and words burn into your soul. Timothy, already familiar with the scriptures thanks to his family, felt something different. Like for the first time, everything made sense. It wasn't just a beautiful sermon. It was a spiritual calling that felt like it had his name on it. Paul saw in him too, and after speaking with his mother and the community, he made a bold offer: come with me. Accepting that invitation wasn't easy. Timothy would have to leave his town, his family, his routines, and above all, the safety of the familiar. Not everyone abandons everything to follow a preacher constantly persecuted, stoned, and imprisoned. But something inside told him this decision would change everything. It was the start of an apostolic mission where he'd witness miracles and face tragedy. What looked like madness was, in truth, the beginning of a greater purpose. How many times does life present us with similar crossroads? They don't always come with lightning from the sky or angels speaking. Sometimes it's just an unexpected invitation, a conversation that stirs you inside. Timothy didn't become a disciple out of conveniency, embraced the risk of faith. And it was exactly that risk that put him on a path that would transform him. The journey was just beginning, but he had no idea how hard and revealing it would be. The path of faith was never paved with roses. Timothy learned that early on, walking beside Paul. They weren't traveling for applause, but for souls. And the cost was steep. In one of the cities they visited, a Christian elder was captured by soldiers and, before everyone, given one last chance to deny Christ. He refused. Timothy saw the man executed right then and there, not with fear, but with a peace that hurt more than blood. That moment burned into his memory. For days, he couldn't sleep. The scene replayed every time he closed his eyes. Would he have that same courage? Would his faith hold up in the face of death? These questions began to gnaw at his confidence. Christianity, which once felt exciting, now had a visible price: pain, rejection, even death. Religious persecution wasn't a myth, it was real, brutal, and relentless. And yet, in that reality, Timothy's faith started to deepen. No longer based only on beautiful words, but on practical decisions. He learned that following Christ meant carrying a cross that wasn't always visible sometimes. It was a silent agony. And though shaken, he chose to keep going. But what came next wasn't comfort. It was doubt and a disturbing revelation. Just as his faith was maturing, the unexpected happened. During a trip, a mysterious man approached him with a piercing stare and a chilling phrase, "Do you really know Paul?" The question shook him. The man spoke with such certainty, as if he knew something Timothy didn't. Worse, he hinted that Paul was hiding truths, manipulating his disciples with eloquent speeches, but impure motives. How could he not doubt if only for a moment? Timothy had trusted Paul like a spiritual father. But now, seeds of uncertainty began to take root. Around the same time, an unsettling rumor surfaced. His own father, the skeptical Greek from Lystra, may have supported the persecution of Christians. The news shattered his peace and his identity. Who was he really? A pure disciple or the son of an enemy of the faith? That kind of internal crisis is more common than we think. Many of us have wondered if we're on the right path or if we've been misled by people we admire. Timothy felt the ground shift beneath his feet, but instead of running, he chose to observe, question wisely, and wait. He didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew that doubt is sometimes just the prelude to a deeper revelation. And that revelation wasn't far off. Trust is like a wall it takes time to build, but can collapse in an instant. That's exactly what happened when Dimison of the closest disciples made a shocking decision. Driven by fear, greed, or exhaustion, he turned the group over to the authorities. Soldiers stormed one of the hideouts and arrested several brothers. Timothy barely escaped, but the damage was done, not just to the mission, but to the heart of the community. Everything changed after that. What was once unity and hope was now suspicion and fear. Whispers and doubtful glances spread. Who would betray them next? Was someone else a spy? Timothy, already wrestling with inner doubt, now walked a minefield where every step had to be calculated. Demas' betrayal wasn't just a personal choice, it was a communal wound. And as a leader in training, Timothy had to deal with the scars it left behind. That's when the spiritual calling weighs the most. Faith isn't enough. You need emotional maturity, not to let bitterness eat away at you. Timothy began to understand that leading an apostolic mission required more than pretty words or good intentions. It required fast forgiveness, wise actions, and perseverance even when everything screams for you to quit. And little did he know, while dealing with betrayal, an even bigger blow was coming. Paul's imprisonment in Rome hit the disciples like a thunderclap. For Timothy, it felt like the ground had disappeared. His mentor, spiritual guide, and father figure was now chained, isolated, awaiting a harsh judgment. For the first time, full responsibility for leading the faithful fell on him. He was no longer the apprentice, he was the leader, and the pressure was suffocating. Every decision, message, and step would be watched by a wounded, wary community. With his heart in pieces, Timothy chose to visit Paul in prison. The meeting was silent, intense, marked more by looks than words. Paul, aged and wounded, passed on one final lesson: stand firm. Guard what I entrusted to you, and know this: there are truths you have yet to discover. That phrase thundered in his mind. What truths? What was still hidden? Timothy left that prison cell, shaken to the core with a new burden on his shoulders. This is where many leaders fall when they realize the truth is more complex than they imagined. Timothy felt the weight of his mission and now the weight of the unknown. He knew his faith had to grow even more. The time to follow was over now. It was time to lead, even without all the answers. And one of those answers was just around the corner. One day, while going through some of his grandmother's old belongings, Timothy found a carefully rolled scroll. His hands trembled as he opened it. It was a letter written by a Roman officer mentioning his father and confirming what he had feared most. His father had, in fact, collaborated in persecuting Christians in Lystra. It wasn't just rumor. It was raw truth. One of the men responsible for God's people's suffering shared his bloodline. The revelation pierced his heart. For years, he had tried to understand his spiritual identity, balancing his mother's teachings with his father's silence. Now it all made sense. And at the same time, nothing did. How could he keep preaching the gospel with this weight? How could he reconcile his mission with his origin? But in that moment of inner collapse, Timothy remembered Paul's words, "God's power is made perfect in weakness." That discovery didn't push him away from his calling, it deepened his devotion. He understood the gospel wasn't about perfect origins, but about redemption and purpose. His secret past became fuel for his leadership. He knew many brothers also carried painful stories. And now, with greater empathy and strength, he could guide them. But not everyone wanted that truth exposed. And it put his life in real danger. Truth has a price, and sometimes it's too high. After Timothy shared parts of the revelation with close brothers, strange things began to happen. He was followed, shadows in the night, footsteps echoing long after sunset. Then one silent evening, someone tried to kill him. The attack was swift, cowardly, but failed. Timothy survived, wounded but alive, and more determined than ever. The attempt to silence him proved the past still had claws. Someone feared the truth's impact. Maybe a former Roman collaborator. Maybe a brother hiding secrets of his own. But the message was clear: there were forces that didn't want certain stories told. Now, Timothy carried not just a spiritual mission, but a revealed secret, an open wound, and the responsibility not to let fear defeat faith. And this is where Timothy's journey takes a new turn. He was no longer just Paul's disciple. He was a leader who had suffered, doubted, nearly fallen, but stood firm. He knew the path would be lonely at times, but he also knew that truth sets you free even when it hurts. In dark times, he became a light not because of perfection, but because of the courage to keep going when everything tried to silence his voice. Timothy's story is more than a biblical biography. It's a mirror where many of us can see ourselves. Who hasn't faced internal conflict between what they were taught and what they believe? Who hasn't trusted someone only to feel the sting of betrayal? Who hasn't had to lead, even while feeling unprepared, alone, or lost in identity? Timothy faced it all. He started divided between Jewish faith and Greek culture. He left everything to follow a man constantly persecuted. He saw the violence of religious persecution up close. He was shaken by secrets from his past and nearly lost his faith. He was betrayed, hunted, and still he stood, because he understood it's not about having all the answers, but about continuing, even when questions remain in your heart. And now I ask you, where are you in your journey? Are you at the beginning, trying to understand your calling? Are you battling doubts, wounds, or feeling betrayed by those who should support you? Or maybe you're carrying a secret, a burden, something you still haven't overcome. But let me remind you of one thing: God doesn't choose the perfect. He calls the willing. Just as he did with Timothy, he can turn your conflict into mission, your pain into compassion, your doubt into wisdom. So take a deep breath and keep moving. Your story is still being written. And just like Timothy, you might be much closer to your purpose than you think. If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Comment below what touched you most in Timothy's journey and how you see your own path of faith. And of course, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to keep following content like this, messages that go beyond words and speak straight to the soul.